light is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm sure there's pros and cons for it, but it seems to be a very crowded intersection and a dangerous intersection because of all the different flows of traffic there.
All right. Does
So we have
anyone have? Okay.
Yeah, we have Laurie next. Laurie, you will be able to unmute yourself now.
Yes, okay, thank you. I have a couple questions and comments. First relates to the Alameda corridor, where there's been a great deal of work done. I live on Walsh Road, and my concern is anything that may or may not be done that impacts our ability to get to and from our homes coming off of Walsh. And so I know the traffic study that I looked at talked about either signalization or a roundabout at Atherton Avenue and the Alameda. And I want to get some feedback in terms of what's been looked at there. Also, the notion of moving the pedestrian light that's further down on the Alameda near Las Amitas School, moving it down to Camino Al Lago. And I wasn't clear on whether or not the thought was to keep that pedestrian a lighted pedestrian access, or to turn that, to convert that to a traffic signal as well, which would impact, again, access to and from Walsh Road. A more general comment is the reason that I learned about this meeting was through a friend, and virtually no one that I've talked to was aware that this was going on. August is obviously a time that people really aren't around or focused, and the level of participation by residents in this process is so minimal. My big question is what can be done to expand the effort. I think only kind of soliciting comments through the end of August really isn't sufficient. And I think a great deal of community outreach and education, I know it's a lot of work, but it's one that's very worthwhile because we're looking at long-term solutions, and it's important that people's voices be heard. So those were my questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Laurie. We have hosted the previous week's workshop, and we're hosting today. And I feel that people who have missed out on these two can obviously go to the website and put down their comments in the interactive map or the survey. And we have more workshops after this where we're going to be discussing all these inputs that everyone has provided, and we're going to be developing some alternatives as solutions to these issues. So I would suggest, and we try to get the word out as much as possible, because all the surveys are going to be over by the end of this month. So if everyone would get the message out and participate in all of these feedback process, then we can, by the next workshop, we can have more an impactful conversation with everyone.
Yeah.
Before.
Can I? I'll stop talking. I really don't think that that's sufficient. It's August. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm telling you, there's no one I have spoken to that had heard anything about this. And so, if you're really looking for genuine input from the community, then I think a greater effort needs to be made to solicit that. It may not match up with what your project schedule is, but I would take a step back and really allow people's voices to be heard.
Definitely, thank you.
So before we move on to Gary, I also had a question for Laurie. Uh, what kind of medium would you suggest? Like you did give us some points, but do you have any specific way where you received your news and town news or city council news that you would like us to approach more? Like, do you get your news by Facebook or something, or
I,
do you get your
I,
news?
I do not. I'm not a social media person, but what I would do is, since you've broken down the town into these different zones, what I would do is to recruit volunteers from each of those zones. For example, on Walsh Road, I have a directory. We keep a directory of everyone who lives around here, and we have like a little um, we stay in touch. We have next door, things like that. So what I would do is I would recruit a few people from each of your zones and ask them to reach out into the community. I would provide them with kind of a white paper summary, not anything that's technical, that was a good summary of what the objectives are and some of the what you're trying to achieve, so that that could be easily transmitted to everyone's neighbors. I think the kind of a grassroots boots on the ground approach is going to be the most effective. So that's what I would do if I was organizing it. So
Great, thanks, Laurie, and please feel free to spread the word out. I mean, any neighbors, friends, at least if you would do that, that would be great. I won't keep Gary waiting for so long. Gary, you might be able to unmute yourself now.
Great, thank you. My comment is not specific to just Area 3. It pertains to Area 3 and other areas as well. Firstly, as some of you may know, I was until June the chairman of the Atherton Transportation Committee. And the point that I frequently made, but is not really being shared much as part of this process, is that the worst problems that people complain about, namely speeding and cut-through traffic, is largely a result of congestion on the major streets, arterials or collector streets. And so solving that problem is going to be the only real way to reduce the speeding problems. There, speed bumps and other traffic calming measures do cause people to slow down when they go over these bumps, but they have a tendency to accelerate in between them. And studies have shown that people go faster in between speed bumps than they otherwise would have driven. So not sharing that information while asking people what they want, could lead to people getting something that winds up being worse, even though they may think it's better. So I suggest, as part of this outreach, that you share what is known about some of the drawbacks of traffic calming measures, and also addressing the root cause of the congestion. So, for example, at the Alameda Dos Clogas and Atherton Avenue intersection, the traffic study, the corridor analysis that you did included an analysis of that intersection. In it, you pointed out that it would be good to have a roundabout, but there's not enough space, and so therefore you recommend a traffic signal. You correctly pointed out that a roundabout could reduce overall crashes at intersections where stop signs were previously used for traffic control, but the studies have shown that a signal causes more crashes than a roundabout, and that trade-off is not considered. At the same time as the TJ Cam study happened, oh wait, sorry, there was, you did the larger study, AMG did the corridor study. In your study, you correctly pointed out that there are overhead power lines which could be a problem for putting in a traffic signal there. So the two studies are in conflict on that issue. Neither study looked at using a mini roundabout, which is advocated by the Federal Highway Administration, and that would mitigate the issue of there
of the need for any kind of space, any type of land taken from the residents. So those are my only points. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Would you like to, we received a comment from CPT. Would you like to say this, elaborate on the issue that you have said? And we are about time for this area. So we can just take one more comment if there is any, or else we'll move on to next. So CPT, I can unmute you for a second and see if you would like to speak. Or is that all in the comments? Well, we'll move on to the next.
Okay, Larry has raised his hand, so I guess we can take one last comment for moving.
Larry, you will be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to underscore Lori's point. I am surprised, given the concern in Atherton, that there's been such low participation. And I think there is an issue of doing this in August, and particularly in a pandemic. I mean, I think if it had been a year ago or a year from now, hopefully when things are better, you'd have a lot more involvement. I don't know what you do with that, but I encourage you to take that seriously. Second, I'll just comment on Stockbridge Avenue. The problem has been, and again, it's good now given the pandemic, but it's been horrendous and gotten worse over the last decade, is the speeding and the cut through traffic. And those two go together because cars can go so fast on Stockbridge, they naturally use it to cut through. And it's increased over the last decade, and along with the increase of use of things such as Waze and other traffic apps that just drive people, turn by turn to the fastest way through a community. And the fastest way is not based on the posted speed limit, it's on how fast the cars are going. So I think there needs to be some solution that's holistic for the whole city, so it doesn't just move traffic around, and deals with this issue of speed and cut through. And if there's something that can be done that reduces speeds on the streets, I think that will impact the cut through as well, along with Gary's comments, which I think are right on, which is as long as the corridors are packed up, people are going to race back and forth through Atherton from El Camino to Alameda or Alameda to El Camino to get there faster. And so again, I would look at the speed and the cut through as linked, and there's a need to figure it out holistically what we do. I grew up in the Midwest. In the Midwest, you always heard about speed traps. These were little communities that didn't have enough money, so they set up speed traps and they made their money by giving out tickets. And it worked until people figured out that there was a speed trap, and then people went around those communities and went somewhere else. So there's kind of a history of enforcement working. When we had the death on El Camino, the city's response was to put officers with radar guns there, which I assume was because there's some evidence that police and radar guns and stopping traffic and enforcement has an impact. So I would just encourage that be looked at as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your comments, Larry. So we're going to move on to the next neighborhood. So we have south of Atherton Avenue. And again, if you have any concerns, please raise your hand and we can take them one by one.
We are waiting for people to raise hand. Meanwhile, we have got a comment in the chat box saying Stockbridge is the only straight shot from Alameda to ECR before the backup at Atherton Avenue. Shelby doesn't go all the way, so Stockbridge is more of a concern too. And the second comment is Watkins on ECR North. It can be a long way to turn right. I'm just waiting for people to raise hand if you guys have any other comments, raise hand, or okay, we have Gary again. And Gary, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yep. So I just wanted to make a second comment with respect to the issue of traffic calming devices. If they get implemented on a one street, like for example Fairview Avenue, where people in the PM rush hour, to avoid the backup going north on Alameda to Las Pulgas, they divert to go to Fairview to Atherton Avenue. If one were to put traffic calming devices there, that traffic would then shift to Linda Vista. And if you put it on Linda Vista, it would then shift to Monte Vista rather. So so it's basically you would have a whack-a-mole. So my recommendation is that if there is actually any real consideration of traffic control devices on any given street, as part of the public comment process, you should notify the residents of the streets onto which that traffic would otherwise be diverted to get their input, because it's not, otherwise you won't be making a net improvement, and you're making some people's lives worse than they otherwise would be.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks.
Gary, your points are well taken. I think we would definitely make sure that we do put pros and cons for each traffic calming device that we are proposing, or it's already in the traffic calming handbook that we have. We will talk to city and we would see if that could also be posted on our project website, so that just for the ease of everyone to get to it. Unfortunately, the point that you're making regarding traffic flowing down to different streets, traffic is like flowing water. If you stop at one location, definitely you could see the ripple effect somewhere else. And that's the whole reason why we want to make sure that whatever we implement does not impact the others in the neighborhood. So we will definitely take care of that. We would definitely make sure that there is going to be some impact. There's no doubt about it, and there's nothing to hide about it. But we will make sure that we do let others know that what are the cons of implementing those devices and what it will be, which street will be impacted.
Great. One other suggestion is, I don't know if there have been any studies that look at the amount of additional carbon emissions or expense is incurred for people stopping or slowing down for a speed bump and then reaccelerating. There have been studies of that regarding stop signs, and with a medium amount of stop sign, like let's say 2,000 cars per hour, which is or per day, the cost is many thousands of dollars of gasoline and tons metaphorically, a great deal of carbon emissions. So I think that would be a relatively easy calculation to make, and that should be listed among the cons associated with it.
Great. So we have Anthony here. Anthony, one of the comments that we received from Carol is that she wanted to be, I'll unmute her. She wanted to be on the north of El Camino, but she had came here by, would you, Carol, you are on
her now. Sure.
Oh,
yeah, would you like to get reassigned, or would you like to stay here with us?
I'm fine with either. I'm on the transportation committee also, so maybe I was put there for a reason. I don't know. I'm fine.
No, if you're not in the right room, it's because I assigned you to the wrong one. So
it doesn't matter. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments, though. And we have some more comments in the chat from Tom Owen. Tom, would you like to speak? Would you like to raise? Would you like me to unmute you?
Sure. Good evening. I think it's a simple comment to illustrate, and it's been a long time since I've driven any form of carpool, but when I used to do that, turning left to head east on Valparaiso off of Alameda, and I believe it's similar on Emily, although I believe that to be better traffic controlled by the carpool over on that side of school. And again, things have changed since I've done this last, but there was a great deal of congestion along Alameda to make that left turn, and that created some very unsafe situations as folks just decided to take chances the longer they would wait. So my suggestion would be to see if it's still the problem. I suspect it is, and if so, then research accordingly. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else have want to speak out their concerns?
We have 2 more minutes.
I'll unmute CPD first. I don't know. Are you able to? Yes, you can speak now.
Yes, this is Mr. Teppan on Fairview. And, I know that I've read the Alameda de las Pulgas study and the recommendation of moving the signal by this up to this corner of the school, Camino al Lago, as well as the possibility of a signal at Alameda. And I think both of those, especially the one at Alameda and Atherton Avenue, would probably be the best solution, because signals will move a lot more traffic than stop signs. Obviously, at a stop sign, everybody's got to wait for the person going the opposite direction or turning left. With a signal, you have flow through traffic and it moves. We've seen many, many times when the traffic is backed up on Alameda in the evenings, all the way back into Menlo Park areas, just because of the stop sign. So, and of course, we're affected by that because people turn off and come down Fairview. And the other gentleman who mentioned Linda Vista and Monta Vista, obviously they would move to those if Fairview had some kind of calming device. So it does have to be kind of a regional solution, but I think it has to start with a signal at that intersection. Whether you move the one at the school down to the corner of Camino al Lago as well, I think that would be better for the children. And for us, when we try and turn left from Camino al Lago onto Alameda, it's very difficult sometimes to get out from the traffic. In fact, it's almost better for us to go down to Atherton Avenue and turn at that location, because there is a stop sign, four-way stop sign there.
And you really bring a good point. And those are the kind of comments we really want to know, because what happens is if we try to control traffic on all the residential as well as some of the collectors and arterials, we are kind of promoting them to use the other residential streets as cut through. So as a community, as a part of the neighborhood, I think citizens need to be very clear that, well, do we want to leave Atherton as our main arterial or, main collector to take all the traffic so that they do not penetrate into the neighboring streets? And if you keep that in mind and make sure that you have traffic flowing through those streets very easily without having to create congestion, then the possibility of them to penetrate into other smaller residential streets where they should not be opting to makes it a little bit easier that way. So thank you for your comment. We will definitely look into that, and I know that it was also recommended in long range study as well as the Alameda de la Pulga study. So we will definitely keep that in mind.
I have one additional comment I'd like to make in that regard. I was talking specifically here a moment ago about northbound traffic in the evening. We also have an issue with the traffic on Fairview of drivers going to the schools, primarily Sacred Heart and Menlo, young drivers, and they come down Fairview and cut through Camino al Lago. I think there has to be an education with the people, with the schools, to let them know that it's not desirable to be cutting through Atherton, that they should come down Alameda and turn on Valparaiso to get to the schools rather than cutting through all the residential areas, because they do come very, very quickly. And I've contacted the police department many times about that, especially on Camino al Lago, because it's blind curves and they'll do 40 miles an hour in there. And I walk my dog in the morning at 7 o'clock, and it's scary sometimes what's going on. So besides trying to get them off those roads, you need to talk to the schools and have them talk to the students about it.
We will definitely engage school officials and make sure. And we do have Joe with us in our group today, and he is making notes. Right, Joe?
Yeah, in fact, that is just something that hasn't changed. When I was out working patrol many moons ago, it was the same thing, cut through. You'd be surprised at some of the speeds you'd get on radar for students cutting through, exactly like you just described. So we will reach out to the schools. I guess right now the good news is that there's not going to be anybody at the schools, but we will let them know about the comments during this meeting and make sure that they advise the students. We'll be out there as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much.
So Tawal and Ria, do we have another area that we need to? Okay.
Yes, we're moving on there. So we have
Gary,
our last, sorry.
Gary had I'll unmute Gary first. Gary, you had a comment about this area, the area before or?
Before, yes.
In particular?
Yes, a previous gentleman made a comment regarding congestion on Emily Avenue, or Lena Avenue rather, due to southbound, due to lots of people waiting to make a left turn. That street, Emily, and many others where the minor street intersects with a major one are good candidates for making a segregated left and right turn lanes, which would enable many people to get out around the left turners, and would also cause people who have a choice to choose to make a right turn instead of a left turn, because you can often do a U-turn, safely turn elsewhere. So that type of modification only involves changing the striping on the ground and maybe adding a little pavement if there's the right of way. And Atherton Avenue, it's not an issue. Atherton Avenue does not have that type of congestion, but Valparaiso, El Camino, and Alameda de los Pulgas all do. And it's very inexpensive. In your traffic study of the town, you recommended traffic lights at some of those intersections, but as you know, they cost about $500,000 a piece and have to be done in conjunction with Menlo Park. So that's a challenge. So what I'm suggesting would be much less expensive and easier to implement. So
yeah,
thanks.
and Gary, we had also recommended having left turn pockets, and when we took the recommendations to the council, they wanted to make sure that we involve the community, because those recommendations were made without having community input, just based on what we thought was the best to mitigate those issues. And that's what has led to this particular extension of this study, is bring back those recommendations that were made, get it to the community, make sure that they like the recommendations that we have made before we implement. So thank you for bringing that up. We definitely need left turns at Elena as well as Emily, because that is creating some of the congestion around, especially during the school pickup and drop off time. So we will keep that in mind. And when we come back with recommendations, we'll definitely have that in.
Great. Thank you.
There is some right of way issue, but I'm pretty sure that we can work our way out.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So now this is our last portion of the session, and we're going to talk about West of Alameda. So if anyone has any questions, they can raise their hand and we can do the whole thing once again.
If you are having any trouble with raising hand, you can also use the chat and tell me I want to raise hand. I can do either way.
Maybe Gary, any good comments in this area since you have been participating?
Well, the only thing I'd say is that I think that the issue about the moving the traffic light to the intersection of Walsh Road versus the entrance to the school, I think that really should be revisited, because I don't think that a debate with all of the merits and demerits of each alternative was really had. And a lot of people screaming no, no, no is not really a thoughtful debate. And I think that if the residents of Walsh Road understood the arguments on both sides, they would be more amenable to it. And I think that would have been the optimal solution there.
Thank you.
We have council member Elizabeth. Would you like to say something? Or any other person who would like to say something?
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Yes, I am encouraged with this website and the community outreach that we're embarking on. I do believe that we are just now kind of tickling everyone's imagination and getting them involved. I think Lori Shepherd's comments are very relevant, that a lot of people, I know that staff has done a tremendous amount of work doing the outreach that they've done so far. However, with this pandemic, everyone has been focused on so many other things and just kind of coming up for air, not knowing what to do with their kids going to school or not going to school. And if there was any way possible that we could just extend the deadline for the surveys, I think it would really be helpful. I know that I am going to embark upon a public outreach campaign and sending the links to the website myself, just from my email list to residents, which I hadn't done before. And I know that Lori's right about trying to do a grassroots type of outreach. So I think we're really onto something here, and I think the website is really going to be a good tool for us. Thank you all for participating, and we've got to get this right. We don't want to change the character of our town, even though it is changing in front of us with so much traffic. But thank you again, and thanks for allowing me to speak.
So Elizabeth, would you be comfortable if we can convince city to push it out to middle of next month? So
I think that would be
15th of September. Okay.
Yeah, I think that at least that would be great. 15th of September would give us just a little bit more breathing room. Yeah.
Sounds good. We will definitely do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the help and doing the grassroots outreach as well, because that is something that would be really helpful for us.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll go with Zach. Zach, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted at this point. I'm sort of late to the meeting tonight, so I missed the first hour. I'm curious, was there any conversation regarding Selby Lane and the intersection with El Camino Real?
You can
Yes.
let us know your concerns.
What was that?
I'm saying, Zach, you can go ahead with your concerns. We will jot that down.
Well, I was wondering, were there any, okay. So I'm just, first of all, one of my concerns, was there any conversation so far about that intersection? Was that a topic of conversation this evening on this call?
Yes, we did go through it, and even in the meeting before that, on August 6th, we did go through that particular intersection, and has been coming up again and again. I won't be able to repeat all the comments to you, but right now, and if you have any specific thing that you want to point it out, we have gone through that. So to answer your question, yes, we have gone through that intersection before, but would be nice if you could give us your comments too.
Sure. I have concerns about signalizing that intersection. I'm against it. And I believe the way it was designed initially, that there's enough space in the middle for people at certain hours of the day for being able to make a safe left turn. At times when the traffic is tough, then they can go down Oakwood and make a left turn at the signal light over there, and I think that's very workable for the neighborhood. And what's to be gained by that is the opportunity to maintain a bit more of the rural nature of the neighborhood at that end of the street than having the glare of stoplights and what I believe will be additional traffic. That will be encouraged by signalizing that intersection. It's I think that it's I don't know if there are any other solutions that were posed for how to be able to deal with some of the traffic that's otherwise coming down Selby Lane. There have been other options related to the school and rerouting some of the traffic to the school that had been posed at one point, and having some of that, the parents for the school bringing children down through Woodside Road versus Selby Lane in the past. I think that could be re-explored. So I'm just a voice against having signals at that intersection.
All right.
Point well taken.
Thank you so much for your comments.
So we have Larry. Is it about the time that we are done? But we have Larry. We'll just take Larry.
One last question. Yep.
Just one overall comment. We've been residents of Atherton for 40 years, and we've seen this tremendous increase in traffic and the tremendous increase in speeding. And most of the comments, I think, tonight have been about intersections where there's extensive traffic, et cetera, speeding throughout. It's not because the population of Atherton has increased dramatically in the last 40 years. In fact, it hasn't. Best to my knowledge, it's probably flat. It's because of the tremendous amount of cut-through traffic, and because the cut-through traffic feels it's appropriate to speed in Atherton. It leads to the speeding problem. It leads to the congestion at these intersections, because that's not a lot more Atherton people turning from Alameda onto Valparaiso. It's cut-through traffic that's coming north-south through there. So I think the team that's working on this should be chartered with the task of come up with a holistic solution that deals with cut-through traffic and speeding, and not with solutions, individual solutions that just move that traffic around from place to place, because that doesn't solve the problem, and it's just going to start to create stresses within the community if the result of the study starts to look like it's causing traffic to get worse in some places so it can get better in others. So it's not an easy task. I don't have an answer for it. I think some of the comments earlier about particularly about the other roadways like El Camino and congestion there, and some of Gary's comments about what creates the fundamental problem, I think need to be taken at heart. Again, I don't know what you do with it, but I would caution the group that if what comes out of this is some what I'd call tactical solutions that just move the traffic around and don't deal with that fundamental issue, I think it's not going to be viewed as a success, and I think it's going to create stresses within Atherton that we don't need. We don't need, Street A getting upset because Street B's traffic moved on to Street A or vice versa. So I really encourage a holistic solution, and I'd be happy to see you guys do a brainstorming session sometime about what are all the ideas people can come up with to deal with that fundamental overriding issue. And I think you'll get some good ideas.
Right, and Larry, you bring a good point, and that was the main intention of getting this started. We had so many different studies like Alameda de la Pulgas, long range plan, bicycle study, and every study has their own recommendations. And what city council said that, sorry, I should say town, but that's what they wanted to see. They did not want to go ahead and implement solutions on individual streets without looking at it holistically. And that was the main reason why we considered to look at it with respect to the entire town and what could we do overall so that it does not create issues or problems to other residential streets. And we will definitely put all that together, and we're not going to implement anything without everyone being, I cannot say that we would get 100% vote or consent on whatever we are trying to do, but at least we would bring that back to you and make sure that, we are trying to resolve the issue and not create more issues.
The other thing I'd ignore is this issue of trying to get as much community involvement as possible. And I know you're doing your best and the effort, and I don't understand why people haven't been aware, but it's been the case. But I would recommend that for a different reason. I think if this study gets to some conclusions and those get implemented, you're going to get a lot of feedback then that you should have gotten now. You don't want people to engage after you've already committed some things, because then all heck will break loose and you will never hear the end of it. It will be a huge problem. Whatever it takes to get more engagement now. If you can't get engagement now, take the time to get the engagement, because I guarantee you'll get the engagement after the results are implemented. and it won't be very fun at that point. And you won't be able to do much about it.
Exactly. And we have seen that, at least I have seen that over 20, 25 years of my, experience in traffic engineering. Yes, when we give everyone opportunity to really tell us what they want, they wouldn't come up. And then later on, when something is implemented because others wanted, there are a lot of feedback that you get. And so we would also keep in mind that if possible, we could do some pilot temporary implementation if it does come to that point where, we are not spending a lot of funds to put that in, but at least residents would know that, yes, we are ready to do something. Here are our comments, and, we won't feel as bad to remove that if it doesn't work for you. So we will have that in mind as well. As far as the public outreach effort, we have put in a lot of effort to, gather as many people as possible. And that's the reason we had like 2 meetings to make sure that everyone is busy. And it takes a lot to take out time in your busy schedule and attend one of these meetings. And sometimes people forget too. But we would really need your help in this too. If you could talk to your family and friends around and let them know about this project so that we get maximum input, we would really, really appreciate that. But at our end, if like Elizabeth said, if we have to extend the surveys until mid of next month, it's completely fine. We will definitely, try to do that. Also, we got a comment from George saying that at least virtual meeting has done one good thing, is people do not physically show up, but at least we have more participation through this, because it's just made it easy for people to join these meetings at the comfort of their house. So again, I would really like to thank you guys to take out this time and let us know what your concerns are. But if you can spread this out to as many people as you can, that would definitely help us to bring you some sound solution that works for you. Because we don't live there, and we won't have to deal with this, but you would have to deal with it for years to come.
Well, one last comment, and I'll help with any way I can with the outreach, but this notion of brainstorming or getting as much thoughts and out of the box thinking as you can. For example, I saw it a long time ago. There must be a reason it doesn't work, but there was discussion about peak time tolls in communities to discourage traffic, right?
Yes.
So if there were tolls for going through Atherton, you might see some of that cut through traffic go elsewhere. And I'm not recommending that. I don't know if it's legal, but there've got to be ways to think holistically about how do you avoid the speeding and the cut through and the congestion that it all results in.
You bring a good point, a very, very difficult measure to implement for sure, but we will definitely keep that in mind.
Well, it could be a revenue generator for Atherton, quite frankly. And if I would think the citizens of Atherton would be willing to pay for their own tolls to get in and out of the community to have the traffic settled down.
Yes, a lot of cities want to do that. For example, East Palo Alto also wants to do that through University Avenue, and it would definitely generate a lot of additional funds for the town, but definitely very, very difficult measure to implement.
I'm sure. Okay.
So I
We
would
have
like to take this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Dhawan.
we had Robert in joining us our room, so I thought Robert would want to add something or.
Oh, no, I'm going to say, you know, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join and share your thoughts. You know, it's really important for us to hear from you, and we know that a lot of you have better things to do with your time, and we really appreciate you taking out the time to join us. So we do appreciate the feedback, and we'll be summarizing the feedback that we received, and we will also be posting the videos of tonight's meeting as well as last week's meetings online, and we'll be sending out notices for that as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Have a great evening.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.